I'm actually presenting on behalf of Alan Jones as well, so I'm going to take a deep breath and put all this together in a single presentation. Nearly 10 years ago, the Winston-Salem Alliance hired McKinsey Consulting to come to our city and to analyze our city and to look at what we need to focus on as a city for the future. Last year, we brought them back together again and said, 10 years has passed, let's look at what we did, and how about looking at the future for us? In particular, what we'd like you to do is to look at the top performing mid-sized cities in the United States, compare us to them, and see how we are doing. We took 3 criteria to follow. One was per capita income, the other was population growth, and the third was quality of life factors. What I'd like to do is give you a brief summary of the analysis of the results from that, what it means for us, and an action plan as we go forward. So 2 quick conclusions from this study. 1, we have fallen behind, and secondly, the top 10 cities have significantly outperformed us in the last decade. So if we're to recapture a place among the top performing mid-sized cities in the United States, we will need to create 30,000 new jobs in the next decade beyond the present organic growth that we are experiencing as a city. And perhaps even more startling, if you look at the recent rates, in terms of the delta or the difference between what's happening, you can actually project those numbers to be much higher. And so, what does that mean for us? Well, systems analysts speak of the phenomenon of the frog in the frying pan. The frog's not quite aware of what's happening to us too late. Well, in reality, this is what's been happening to us with economic capital in our community. What the capital that we've known that was created here 50 years ago that's created the kind of wonderful social services and the wonderful kind of arts programs we've had is being consumed. It's being consumed, and it's not being recreated. In essence, economic capital translates to jobs, increasing per capita income growth, and it's the driver for the rest of the flourishing of the community. So the challenge is, how do we recreate that economic capital for the future? So the second part of our study addressed that. It looked at it and said, how did these cities do it in the last 10 years? What I'd like to do is take a moment to just address what we learned. First, underlying the growth of the top 10 cities that were looked at, out of over 100 cities, the number one thing that we found, the most consistent parallel everywhere, was a single economic magnet. This economic magnet brought people, financial and intellectual capital, created jobs, and enhanced the wealth of the region. There are 3 characteristics of these magnets. Uniqueness, no one else was like this particular magnet anywhere within 200 miles at minimum, sometimes 500 miles, sometimes only in the United States. So it's not like you were a little bit better, it's not like your quality of life was a little bit better, it was nothing like you at all, anywhere. Secondly, it was feasible, that is, you have the resources to actually do this. And thirdly, it was impactful. It was a driver, not a sustainer. A driver means 30,000 jobs can come from it. Clear direction for what can happen. Now, there are 3 catalysts for these magnets that we found. One was massive investment by the federal government. That would be Hagerstown, Maryland, where the IRS moved its headquarters and 10,000 jobs, average pay $75,000. That made a difference in Hagerstown, Maryland. Secondly, leveraging a latent asset. In Killeen, Texas, they had a large military base that had been closed. NAFTA had just been opened up, and they looked at it and said, maybe we could be the distribution center for Latin America coming to America, and they created 100,000 jobs over time and completely changed it. That's part of Austin effectively, and as you know, the population of Austin is doubled because of this. And lastly, the commercialization of intellectual capital. Madison, Wisconsin is the center of agribusiness now for the United States. So the university was very intentional about these efforts. So we then undertook a process of going through our entire region and looking at something that may qualify for that type of magnet. And we believe we have located and identified that magnet. It will involve an enormous amount of private capital. Raising that private capital, local, state, and federal capital will also be required. Will also require us to import significant intellectual capital as well. We'll be really prepared to report on that in about 90 days. We're at the stage now, so a number of documents are being developed, and we will be ready to roll this out. I think it has enormous potential for our region, and it has the kind of transformational impact that some of us who've grown up in here and heard stories about the founding of Reynolds and the founding of Haynes and Piedmont will have a chance perhaps to see that again. It's been a great experience for many of us working together on this. An enormous amount of time has been put in by lots of volunteers as well. And I hope to be ready to kind of talk about it now, but there's been this baseball part that's taking a little time. I'm trying to finish that, which I think is going to happen really soon, and we'll be able to wrap this up as well. So thank you.
All right. Applause, please. Now I'm writing down my questions. I hope you're doing the same, because at the end of the presentations, we will ask you to line up at one of the two mics here on these aisles so that you can be amplified and adequately heard.